Hi, everyone. This is Donna Druchunas, and we are going to have a little SAW sequential artist workshop chat about Procreate and how to make repeating patterns and repeating pattern brushes. So I am going to spotlight my iPad for everyone, and we'll get started. All right, so we're going to look at a couple of things. The first one is tile brushes, making brushes that are tile patterns. It's like so super easy. And then we'll look at how to make repeating patterns in general and how to make those into brushes. And that's a lot more complicated. But you could do pretty much any random shapes you want. The tiles are a lot simpler. So this is a shirt I drew, and I painted it with a tile pattern I made. So let's take a look in this document. Now, you'll notice it's a square. I use a 3000 by 3000 pixel square when I do these. The main reason is gives you a lot of pixels, and that's what my iPad comes up with when I say square. So I just used that one. And I think that might be different depending what device you're on. So that's what I'm saying. I use 3000 by 3000 pixels for this. So this is what I started with. This is how I made that brush. And now I can take any color and I can go into my brushes and it's right there. And I can paint that pattern at different sizes whenever I want. So how do you do that? This is so easy. You're going to love it. Okay, so you start with a blank canvas and leave the background white and pick black for your ink color. You can double tap on the lower left corner of the circle, or you can go to the classic mode and drag all the way down to the lower left corner. Either one of those gives you pure black. Okay, now before we start drawing, we're going to go into the actions menu and select canvas and turn on drawing guide. So I already have it turned on, but it's by default off. So you would click that to turn it on and then click edit drawing guide. And you want to choose the one all the way on the right, symmetry, and then click down here underneath it, options, and pick quadrant. And then assisted drawing should be checked. And if it's not, turn that on and then go up here and click done. And now you should see, it's hard to see because it's such a thin line, but you should see a crosshairs on the middle of your canvas. And when you draw something, it'll show up in all 4 quadrants. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a plain brush. I love making patterns and stamps and things using the syrup brush. A lot of people use a monoline brush because it's just plain and you can make things really perfect looking. I don't like my stuff to be really perfect looking, so I use the syrup brush because it has a nice amount of variation in the line width with the pressure, and it by default has a nice amount of cleaning up the lines. I forgot what you call that. Stabilization. The stabilization amount is up high. So for me, what that does is it smooths out the lines a lot. So I can draw kind of sloppy and it still looks cool. All right, so what's going to happen here to make a tile, you want to draw stuff that's pretty big, because remember, this is just going to be the basically the texture the brush draws with. So I'm going to just draw some stuff here. I have those lines and see how they all connected. It does each quarter and it makes it symmetrical. I'm going to fill that one with black. So that's a nice big fat shape. And I'm going to draw something else in the middle and then put a a big dot in the middle of that and put a triangle in each corner. It doesn't really matter what you do. Do whatever your own style of kind of doodling is to make this. Now, the key to making this work really well is make sure it touches the sides. So you see how when I drew my first shape, I made sure that I went all the way to the edges so that some of my shape are touching all four sides. So that's it. I'm going to make a brush out of this, a pattern, repeating pattern brush out of this. So I'm done drawing my little silly thing, and I'm going to go into share. You can pick JPEG or PNG and just save it, save image. So it saves to your photo album on your iPad. Okay. So then we're going to go into brushes. And the best way to do these brushes is to copy a brush and edit it. And so I got the woven lines brush that comes with Procreate. It's in the textures folder. I made a copy of it and moved it into my favorite brush album, so I didn't have to go scrolling through all my brushes during this lesson. But it's in the textures folder that comes with Procreate. So to make a copy of the brush, you swipe it to the left and click duplicate, and that adds it, another copy of it. Now we're going to go in and change it. So when it's highlighted, you tap it again and the brush studio comes up. There's only one thing we're going to change here, and that is the grain. So the shape of this particular brush is a circle with a really sharp edge. We're not going to change the shape. We're going to go into the grain, and that's, in this case, the wavy lines, and we're going to change it to the thing I just made. So I'm going to go in. If you didn't see that, I clicked edit above the picture of the grain, and then I'm going to go up to the top. I'm going to select import and import a photo. And I'm going to pick the photo I just saved. So now my grain shows that thing I drew. You'll notice the colors are reversed. Where I drew black, it brought it in as white, and where I left it white, it changed it to black. It always does that. And now look, the preview changed to my pattern. And when I draw, I get my pattern. So we can say done. We can go into my document, add a layer, turn off everything else. I'll pick a color, green, and I'll pick my new brush, right? I have my new brush picked. I can mess around with the size, and I can paint with my new pattern. Bingo, I made a tile pattern. That's all there is to it. You make a square, you doodle in it, you make sure you use quadrant symmetry. So that's in the drawing guide, in the canvas again, drawing guide. When you edit the drawing guide, you pick symmetry and quadrant. Then you draw your shape, making sure it touches the sides, save it as a JPEG, and edit a brush. And I suggest editing that wavy lines one that comes with Procreate. So how did I do the sweater thing where I drew a sweater or a shirt and filled it? So I'll make a new layer. I'll take black, and I'm just going to draw. Whoops, can't draw with that. I need to draw with a drawing brush. So I'm just going to draw a dress this time instead of a sweater. Okay, and my shape is closed. So I can take my select automatic, tap inside the dress, pick my color, pick my pattern brush and size, and then I can just paint in the brush. As long as you do not pick up the pen, it stays all aligned and makes a pattern that lines up. If you pick up the pen and start over, it starts in a different place and it doesn't line up anymore. So when you want to fill a whole area, you don't pick up the pen till you're done coloring. So I just made like a nice 1960s dress that my aunt would have worn when I was a little kid, right? So that is how you do that. So I think that one is super easy. Beth says she doesn't see a wavy lines brush. Sorry, it's woven lines. Woven lines. And there's I scrolled all the way down now to find the texture ones. I don't know. I have my brushes all out of order. Here's the texture.
Yeah, one. I searched. I can't find it anywhere, but that's okay.
Woven lines and wavy lines.
Nope,
maybe I imported them from somewhere.
Yeah, I can't find them either.
Okay, so I must have imported them from somewhere. So I will share. I will share a link to this on the Mighty Network and also in the comments to the video on YouTube so that you can get this wavy line brush to use because it works really well for creating these, you know, as a starting point.
Why not any brush? Why start with the wavy line brush? Can't you just?
Because you can start with any of the texture brushes, but they are all a little different. I liked the way that one works. If you go into the texture brushes that come with Procreate, we can do that. Let's look at that. And okay, so
I used the diagonal pattern one and it seemed to work okay.
Okay, there's a diagonal pattern one. I have so many brushes, and here's something that I forgot. The ones that have this little mark in the upper right corner, little tilde, when you're looking in your brush list, those are ones you added to Procreate. Ones that came with Procreate don't have that. So I have a mess in this folder. So that's my bad. So there's a bunch that came with it, and I do not know which ones they are anymore because I don't use it, but okay, these came with it. There's a grid, there's decimals, there's diagonals. This is the one Beth said. Let's take a look at this. I'll duplicate it.
Wait, how do you
go into it?
Wait, how did you duplicate it? Could you just show that again? I missed that.
To duplicate a brush, you swipe to the left on it.
Oh, okay.
And then there's a little menu, duplicate in the center.
Okay.
Do not worry about deleting a brush that came with Procreate. This is the original one. When I swipe to the left, the delete is grayed out. You cannot delete the brushes that came with Procreate by accident. It's impossible. But you still want to make the copy before you mess with it because you can edit it.
Right.
Okay, so I made a copy of diagonal and then I click it. And I'm going to show you the shape here is a circle that has a blurry edge, like a airbrush instead of a sharp edge. And then the grain is the lines. And we can do the same thing here. We can go edit, import, pick a photo. I'll pick the same photo, right? Shows up.
Edit button.
Done. Now you notice what happened here. This one, it came out inverse.
Right. I
Because
couldn't fix
that
it.
was the way the brush was set, the brush that we started with. So I don't know if you remember when we talked about making brushes in general, but when you're in the edit and looking at the shape or the grain, you can tap it with 2 fingers.
That's what it
and
was.
change the black to white and the white to black.
Okay, that I could not remember that part.
This is really cool because, okay, here's the one I just made out of diagonals. So it works pretty much the same as the one that I was showing you. The scaling's a little different because the diagonal line scaling was a little different. In the brush, when you're in all these settings, if you find that when you're drawing with it, it's coming out too small or too big, if you go to properties, you can adjust the minimum and maximum size that's allowed for the brush. So that's something you can mess around with to make it, if it doesn't get as small or as big as you want, you can mess with those sliders. Okay, so here's the one that is what matches what I made in the dress, right? But if I go into the brush and go into the grain again, click edit and double tap it so the white and black invert. And then I save it again. Just make a new, well, I guess it doesn't matter. Now when I do it,
Yeah, cool.
it's the opposite.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, and so you could have two, if you made two copies of the brush, you could
Yeah.
have, you know, completely different patterns. But what's cool about this particular thing, I think, especially if you wanted to use them both, is when you have it this way, it's the figure and ground thing. When you have it this way, it's a pattern of diamonds, two different diamonds, right? Inside of a white outline.
Right.
And if I go into it, edit and switch the colors, it's like red diamonds with stuff inside them.
Yeah.
Your eye, like really, because of the colors that you're using, and your eye makes a different pattern out of it. So that's it. But that's it. And all you do is in the brush, edit the grain, tap with two fingers to switch it back and forth. So you can switch it at any time, but if you're going to use both of them a lot, you might want to save two copies of the brush, one positive and one negative.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a pattern brush. And
Then
there,
Donna,
go ahead.
yeah, how would you rename the brush then? Like it's, defaults to,
Yes. I would suggest renaming the brush. Would
Yeah.
I actually rename the brush? Probably not, because
okay,
I'm too excited and I'm doing something else and I forget.
okay.
I don't, I have, if you'll notice when I exit out of this, all the pictures in my lesson for today are untitled artwork.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't name my layers until I can't keep track anymore. Then I group them and name the groups. So naming it's up to you.
Okay.
Most people suggest obsessive naming. It makes things easier. The thing about naming the brushes though, you can't search in them with the
Yeah.
actual Command F or anything. There's no way to actually
Okay.
search for the name. So if you change the name of the brush, it's only to help you when you're scrolling through. And I just look at the pictures usually.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, but it's a good habit to get into naming all kinds of things, just so they're, easier to find in general. I just want to go back to the ones I did before. I want to show you another one just for fun. Here's another one I drew this morning. So I made just a circle again, touching all the sides. I used the quadrant symmetry, just drew some stuff. And I made a brush of that one too. Yeah, I think it's this. Yeah, I think no, that's not it. I don't know. I lost track of my brushes. There's that one. No, I don't think I made a brush out of that one. So let's take a look at this one and make a brush out of that. Share, JPEG, save image. Okay, and then I'll go in, I'll duplicate this brush, tap it, look for grain, edit, import a photo, pick that one. And then I'll just make a new layer, take this empty layer and paint with it. You see, so they're all beautiful. Whatever doodle you do in your style, you're going to come up with some beautiful patterns. So what do you use these for? In comics, I like to paint clothes with them, like I did that shirt. I like to paint clothes with them. You could make wallpaper for if you have an indoor scene and you want to have texture on the walls. You can make a quilt for the bed. So for me, that's the kind of thing I would think of for that. And also I do a lot of collage stuff in my comics, so I might even use them for a page background and then put my panels on top of that. And that would be behind, instead of just having a white page or a color, I might have that for the background of my page. All right. This is just another one I did, just to show you. You don't have to have big giant lines touching the sides. I only have this little squiggly thing that touches the edges, but it still touches all four edges, it touches the edges. And that's what it looks like when I made the panel. So it's a completely different style of tile because it doesn't have the big, giant, hard border on the shape. It has more dainty, smaller lines. So it doesn't really matter what you draw for your tile. As long as it touches those sides, it will connect. You can try it without touching the sides and see what you get, but it won't be a true tile because they won't be connected together. There'll be like a white line between them, which is okay because you could say it's the grout, right? Okay, this is a little bit different thing that I did. Actually, this one doesn't touch the sides. So this was just a thing I had in my sketchbook that it was in color. So I changed it to black and white. And yeah, I made a brush out of that. And so you can see it's got like the white grout lines between the areas because I did not touch the sides. And then here is both versions. I made a version where I changed it to reverse the colors. So that's what happens if you don't put if you don't put a stuff that touches the corners, then your tiles will have essentially grout lines in them, between them. Okay. Now we got to get on to the next thing because it's somewhat more complicated. So what if you want to make a really random repeating pattern, right? So like I draw stuff like this in my sketchbooks all the time because I find that relaxing. So like when I'm watching TV or if I feel anxiety, I put on a podcast or some music and I just draw stuff like that. I like to do it. So that's watercolor. So I'm like, okay, I want to make a repeating pattern out of that. So I put it in a square. I put it into a square canvas. So some of it got cut off. And I went into the adjustments, hue, saturation, and brightness, and I just dragged the saturation all the way down. Didn't really have to do that because basically what I did is I drew on top of it. I redrew it in the solid black lines and fill. So I just redrew it. Now, to make a repeating pattern that's not going to be made into the brush, you can work with color. It doesn't have to be black and white. For the brush, to create the brush, you want to make it black and white or grayscale because in the grain and the shape of the brush, any picture you bring in, it can't have color. Color is not used for the grain or the shape of a brush. But if you just wanted to make a repeating pattern that you were going to manually put all over the page, it could be color. Okay, so here's my my layer, right? It's not touching the sides. So I could make this into a brush, right how it is, but then it would have those grout lines between it. If I wanted to make a true repeating pattern, I have to go through a few crazy steps. And it's a little harder on Procreate than in like Photoshop, because there's just some features that Procreate doesn't have. So I don't know if you can see the lines there, but I have in my canvas, I have the drawing guide symmetry turned on because I wanted this divided into 4 quarters. We're not going to use the symmetry for drawing it. So you could also have the 2D grid and take the grid size all the way up, and it just makes 4 squares too. Basically, you want to see 4 smaller squares. So you can use 2D grid and drag the grid size to the top, or you can use symmetry and quadrant like we did for the other one. Both of those are the same. What we're going to do is be careful when you click done, because changing the lines to white is right under that, and then you won't see your lines. So make sure the lines are color is somewhere in a color, and be careful when you click done, because you want to be able to see the lines. They're really hard to see, and you probably can't see them on the camera anyway. But so what we're going to do here is we're going to make 4 copies of this. I'm going to unlock it. We're going to make 4 copies of this by doing duplicate, duplicate, duplicate. And now, since they're all layer 2, I'm going to select all 4 of them by swiping to the right, and I'm going to group them. I'm not going to bother renaming them because we're going to move these around and do stuff to them and then get rid of them. So they're all temporary. This is a temporary thing, but you make 4 copies of the layer and then turn everything off except 1 copy. We start with 1 copy, and we're going to take this copy and we're going to use transform. Oh, look, now this is something I wanted to show you. We can't do this yet because look, when I selected it and said transform, it didn't select the whole size of the canvas. My selection is not all the way out to the edge because this doesn't touch the sides. So that won't work right. So there's a little trick to do this to make it work right. And you can just pick any color and any plain drawing brush and just put something in the corner. Now I'm going to delete my other duplicated ones because I want all the duplicates of this to have the little corners. I just scribbled in corners. If you were using the quadrant, it would draw all 4 corners at once. Because I set it to the 2D grid instead of the quadrant grid, I had to draw all 4 corners. Okay, we'll get rid of that later. But now we go back in and we start with 1 layer. So we colored the 4 corners. So now when I click the transform, see the dotted line is right at the edge of the canvas. I don't know if you can see that. Zoom in as much as I can. The dotted line of the selection is right at the edge of the canvas. Before it was inside, it wasn't the full size. Okay, so now, whoops. Now I'm going to take this, I'm going to make sure it's on uniform and snapping is on. And I am going to move this up till it lines up right in the center. Can you see when I get it lined up exactly right, how the line goes all the way across, the horizontal line in that case, and then when I get it lined up right with the center the other way, the vertical line gets. So you want the vertical and horizontal line to show up at the same time and let go. This is what I mean. This is a pain in the neck in Procreate. Other programs have something like filter other offset in Photoshop that lets you do all this moving the 4 layers around automatically, but this is the only way to do it in Procreate. So now we're going to take square number 2. We're going to go to transform, not change anything, and we're going to drag it up. Same thing. Make sure this horizontal and vertical lines both turn solid and let go. If you zoom in there, you can see there's no space between your little triangles. Okay, then we're going to do the last one, second to last one. We're going to move to the lower left. Going to make sure both lines are highlighted and let go. And then number 4, going to move it over here, make sure everything's lined up and let go. Okay, So now we've moved everything around. So what was on the outside edge, those 4 little triangles, is now in the center. Okay, so we can merge these layers by pinching them, or since I made them into a group, we can just flatten the group. Other layers turn on sometimes when you do that. And now we can erase the stuff in the center. Now we've got almost a repeating pattern, but what we need to do to it is add stuff that crosses over the middle parts. We want to add stuff to get rid of those lines in the middle. We do not touch the sides in this part of the process. Do not add anything that touches the sides, but you can add stuff that goes like this across the center, you know, and use the same kind of little motifs that you had in the other parts, little stars, whatever I had. I can extend things that are already there and make them go across and make everything kind of interconnect. This line can come all the way down to there. Can add more stems and more flowers. Doesn't really matter. You just play around till it's how you like it. I'm doing, you know, semi like goofy stuff right here. But this is all just a goofy sketch anyway that I did in my watercolor book for pattern making. We will put one more flower there. Okay, so you just do stuff that crosses over the lines, so there's no border anymore. And as I said, I wasn't being very careful or anything, but I did that. And now I can save this JPEG to my photos. I can go to one of my pattern brushes, duplicate it, and this part's all the same. Go into the grain, edit it, and import my photo. Okay, there that is. And I've got a repeating pattern of this. So I will, let's see, add a layer that's empty. Turn off everything else. And I can paint with my new brush. And I can make it different. So, now see that? See, that's an interesting thing. See how I made the brush bigger, but the pattern stayed tiny. That's the setting in the brushes. And you can go into the brush in the grain, and you can scale your grain, and you can mess around with other features on it. Does the grain move or not? And you can zoom it. Okay, so let's change the zoom and the scale and see what happens when we go back out here. I'll erase that with 3-finger swipe, and we'll start again with what we had, and then we'll make it bigger. So now that I changed the scale and the zoom, you can see as I make the brush bigger, the pattern gets bigger as well. And you can go in and change that in the grain, the scale and the zoom, and then you can also go into the properties and change how big and small you can make the pattern. So those are 2 places when you have the grain that you can change it.
Donna,
Yes,
can I interrupt you for 1 second?
yes.
So how do you get the inverted?
Oh,
thing?
yeah. When you're in the pattern, the grain, you click edit, and this can be the grain or the shape. You tap it with 2 fingers.
Oh, okay. It's as
And
simple as
now-
that.
Yeah, now see, my wallpaper is texture with white flowers instead of white with red flowers. So
How
yeah,
come mine's not working?
because you're not in the right spot, or you didn't tap it with 2 fingers. So you go into your brush make sure you're on grain, click edit, and tap it with 2 fingers.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
You can't tap this one, nothing happens. You have to
Yeah,
go into
That's what I
edit,
was doing.
yep, and tap it. So it looks like you can do something there, but you can't.
Okay,
So-
Donna,
Yes,
all right, I'm a little bit behind here.
Uh-huh.
I don't have the wavy lines. So you said just to go into textures and pick any one?
the diagonal line is the one that Beth used.
Okay.
You can use the Victorian one I've tried and it worked.
Okay, so I've got the diagonal one. That's open. Now I go into it and go to grain. And there's no import texturized. There's no.
No, okay,
check-
look what I'm at. I'm in my brush. This
Yeah.
could be, you have diagonal lines here. I have flowers because I already
Right.
did it.
Right.
You can't import it here. You have to go up to the top of the picture and click edit.
Okay.
Then it comes up bigger and that's where you have import at the top.
Okay, so my duplicate opened it up. There's no edit in grain.
There's,
Just
yes.
says cancel or done.
Then you didn't open the duplicate perhaps?
I did open the duplicate. It's very strange. No, no. Oh,
You
here we
didn't.
go. I found it's a
Yeah.
little different. I have now, when I went to the grain
You
editor,
have-
it says to open the
Do
import.
you have Procreate 5.2?
Maybe not.
Because that's what I'm using. So
Okay.
things might be a little different if you have a different, but the grain
Okay.
editor is what you want.
Got it.
And that's where you can import. But
Got it.
yes, in
Got it.
5.2, some things moved a little. So, and I don't remember where they used to be in the other versions, but it sounds like you found the grain editor.
Yeah, I got it. I'm good.
Yeah, okay. And
Excellent.
that's where you can import. And what's also interesting, you can import a photo, you can import a file. So that means if you have a JPEGs or something saved on your in your iCloud drive, you can use that. And then they have this thing called the source library.
Right.
And these are ones that Procreate just gave you for free. They don't have brushes of all of these in Procreate, but you can use any of these to create your own
Brushes. Yeah.
brushes. Most of them are more like a texture than a pattern,
Yeah.
but yeah, but there's some in there that you can play with too.
Love this. This is great. Thank
So,
you.
I just want to go back over what we did here is most of these are super easy. If you want to go in and with the square canvas, just create a tile. I mean, I could even do that and put them together and export it and make another cool one. But if you just make a tile, if it's touching all 4 edges, the tile, that's all you do. You draw your tile, you export it as a JPEG, and you use that for the brush grain. Then you get a nice tile, and you can invert the colors by going into the grain editor and touching it with 2 fingers to switch to black and white. So you can get 2 versions of it. So that was the one where the edges were touching. It makes an overlapping pattern that connects like tiles. If you make one that has nothing touching the sides, then you can still make a tile out of it, but it has grout, it has grout lines, essentially. Basically, there's space between them because you didn't make them touching each other. The only time you have to do all that complicated stuff is if you want to take something you drew that's just random, like this, and make it into a repeating pattern that has no spaces between the repeats. So like if you were going to put, this would be great on my grandmother's dress in the 1940s, right? Or wallpaper in a house or curtains or something. If you want to make a pattern that repeats, that's a random pattern that has no really visible geometry showing tiles, then you have to do that thing where I made 4 copies of it and moved them to the 4 corners. Then I added stuff that crossed over the empty area between them. And then I use that for my tile. So I made 4 copies, and I'm just trying to turn on single layers at a time. I had this. Let's see, what did I start with? I started with this layer. I started with that layer. I made 4 copies of it. And then I moved them around so that what used to be on the outside edge was now in the center. Then I filled in some stuff in the middle. In this case, it's red just so you can see it. And then making it all black and white, I exported that and made my tile out of it. So the moving the stuff around, and that is only to make an overall pattern where the edges don't show at all. I hope that makes sense. And there's some that I got for free and pay at other places. What else can you do with this kind of thing? These are some I got on Etsy, which is plaid patterns. I didn't really want to make these myself. So just start a new layer here and make it the only visible layer. It's the same kind of thing. I wanted a bunch of plaid patterns, so I got some from Etsy. You know, again, I wanted to draw, you know, plaid shirts and stuff like that. So these are really interesting. The other thing that I found useful in some stuff that I do is animal patterns, like giraffe spots or zebra stripes and things. And I don't remember if those were free or I paid for them, but I got those because I wanted to have animal patterns. I got them specifically because I wanted this, they call a budgie texture, but I used it for mermaid scales. So there's other things you can use them for besides fabrics and things like animal skins and things like that. But those are the 2 kinds. The easy ones where the tiling shows, and the all over one where the tiling doesn't really show. And that's it. And you can just go crazy with it and draw whatever you want. So do you know why some of these pattern brushes, when you brush over them, kind of smudge and lay down more color? Yeah, that's just stuff in the settings of the brush.
Which one? Because I
Yeah,
usually don't
I know
want
the
it to do
plaid
that.
one- I know the plaid ones do that. So let me go in there and see if we can figure out what setting that is. So like what you're talking about is I had this one. No, it wasn't that one.
It was
I
the
don't know.
mermaid scales one.
Well, this does it too. If I go back over it, it gets darker.
Well, it's getting darker is fine with me. What
It's
happens
not,
is it lays down more color and kind of obliterates the pattern.
oh yeah, that okay, the mermaid scale one.
Uh-huh.
I messed around with that one for what I was doing with it, but let's go back to it.
Okay.
Animal patterns, mermaid scale. I only go once when I want to draw with that, because yeah, it doesn't like stay lined up if you go back over it, right?
It also looks like that one is
It's
the
bigger and pressure, right?
the-
So when we
right,
go
the-
in there,
Eat that.
things in the grain such as zoom scale, you can check some of those things. And then also, it's just some of the regular brush stuff. So let's see, dynamics, that's pretty much nothing. Properties.
But I guess in theory, what you were showing us before is if you have a brush whose behavior works the
like,
way you like the behavior,
copy it.
you
Yes.
could, and you could just pick up this grain.
Yes, and so I could do with this. What's happening with this, and I'm not sure where the setting is, but it has a pressure sensitive so that as I press, it gets darker and bigger. So
Right.
that when I go back over it, it's not the same size anymore, and that's why it looks like it's filling in.
Yep,
So
yep.
that is,
Opacity.
yeah, I don't remember where that is. It's not rendering, no. Dynamics, no. Oh, it's probably Apple Pencil, pressure and flow, that's on the
Ah.
Macs. So it's the things with the pressure sensitivity that's making this one change.
That didn't change mine.
Yeah.
It's still pressure sensitive. I'm looking for the,
Yeah, I don't know. I would have to look around. I don't
Look at the
remember. When I
property?
want to change other things in a brush, I just go through and try things.
oh,
I don't, or I go and
Not-
rewatch a video, like one that I did before myself, or one that someone else did on YouTube, because I do not remember all these things all the time. I just want you guys to feel good about this. I do not remember all these things all the time. If I want to know how come this brush, how do I turn off that pressure sensitivity so the pattern is not getting bigger when I press harder? I would probably have to go either through all these things and look for something and try it, either go through all the things on here and figure it out, or I would go and search for grain size changes with pressure or something. And I would have to go look it up again myself too, because I just don't remember everything all the time. The animal pattern brushes did not come with Procreate. I got them somewhere. I think they were free. I don't think I paid for them, but I might have because I needed the mermaid scales. But you just Google, what you want if you want to get brushes that are already made. There's a lot of free texture and pattern brushes and a lot that are not too expensive. Yeah, so Google like free animal pattern Procreate brush, free fish scale Procreate brush. Things like that, you'll find a lot. And then without free, you will find stuff on Etsy, Gumroad, different places. So there's another question in the chat, which is how did I fill a shape with the pattern? So I'm just gonna pick a regular drawing.
Thanks. I totally
thing.
cannot remember.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
thank you.
draw a shape. Doesn't matter what the shape is, right? Draw a shape. I'm just gonna pick select automatic and tap inside the shape.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Do not
Um,
use that enough. Thank you.
Yeah, and now when I paint, it will only go inside the shape. There's other ways to do that. So for example, I could leave the shape empty. I could make a new layer with no selection on. I could paint, and it doesn't go just inside the shape. Then I could go to that other layer and select the inside the shape. I'm gonna do this in a couple weeks, so don't panic about this. I can go back to my other layer now that I have a selection and make a mask.
Oh,
And maybe it did it. Yeah, there, now it's only inside the shape. See? So I'm going to do a whole class on masks in a couple weeks when I don't have so much on my plate.
the other thing about what you just showed, Donna, is sometimes I will do it the way you did. I don't do the mask because I'm mask inept, but then I can take and select that big blob of texture or pattern and move it so that the pattern, the texture is right, like centered in the
Right.
shape or whatever that I want.
Yes. Yeah. And you can remember, if you have a selection made, you can go down here and say save and load and click plus. And now that selection is, I can always bring it back to do different things with it later. And so even if I, totally get rid of that shape and I want to, paint in that shape again and it's gone, I deleted it, I can go into selection, I can click save and load, I can load that selection. And now I could take, like, let's just say a watercolor brush. And we got to be on a layer that's not hidden. And I could, continue to paint more stuff inside that shape, even though I deleted the shape because I saved the selection. So selections they do a lot of things.
I need to relearn all that. I mean,
Yeah.
you just showed us, I know, but I
Yeah.
just, yeah.
I'm working on, it takes more work. Some topics take more prep time for me than others. So I'm working on some lessons on the selections and the masks, because that's super important. And it's hard for most people to understand because it doesn't really relate to anything in the real world. It doesn't work exactly the same as if putting masking fluid or masking tape on. It's kind of the opposite of what it is in that real world. So, yeah. So I'm working on a lesson on that, just so you know, but it's taken me some time to put it all together.
Well,
The,
thank
the
you.
one that you recorded before that the Zoom just didn't pick up. I remember I like almost had it. I was so looking forward to watching it. But I just really appreciate that not only do you know a lot of things and find out a lot of things, but that you're also really thoughtful about how you try to put them together for us so that we could learn them. That's a true
Yeah.
teacher, Donna.
Yeah. Well, my thing is, well, I think I got that from my dad, which I didn't realize till recently, but he was always showing people how to do stuff. But I like to conceptualize things. And I think that's what
okay.
helps like me explain it, because I want to know what's happening, not just you do 1, 2, 3, but why is that working? And what does step 1 actually accomplish for you? You know, like what happens when when you touch the sides, when you draw the tile versus if you don't touch the sides, you know. So yeah, so happy to.
The other thing you do is then you help me see how you apply this, like what part of your comic problem does this particular technique help you solve? And that helps me either like apply it directly to that kind of problem or me to conceptualize, oh, if it'll do this, maybe it'll do this other thing.
Yeah, the really fun thing I did, well, I showed you on this, I filled the dress. But another fun thing I did was in one of my comics, I painted a shirt with plaid, and then I used liquefy to move the plaid around so it looked like the fabric was wrinkled instead of having just a flat plaid on the shirt. Well, there's a lot of comics artists that will do just a flat plaid on a shirt. It's a technique that's used in comics. That's totally acceptable. But on this particular one, I didn't want that. So I put plaid down, liquefied it. And then, you know, I can't remember if I used a mask or erased outside the lines or whatever, but so I combined what we did last week, the liquefy, with using the pattern brush. So anyway, boo, that's what we did this week.
This is great.
Super cool.
This is really great.
So thank you all for coming. I will get this
Thank
up
you.
on the YouTube channel.
Thanks,
And
Post
Donna.
your
This is awesome.
patterns. Post your patterns, everybody. I want to see what people did.
Yeah, post your patterns in the Mighty Network, and that will be fun to see.
I'm sure you'll have yours up like in an hour, Beth.
Yes.
I'm always so
Yes.
impressed with you just like go in and show us. But
Yeah,
it's cool.
Lori said you can
Inspiring.
distort the pattern to work in perspective, which is really cool. Like if you wanted to
Ooh.
make it into wallpaper, you can use the transform distort.
Yeah,
That's the
it's
last
really
thing.
great.
Transform distort. This my whole layer is, but I can change it.
Also, warp is really fun.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great
distort
for a
would be like-
tablecloth.
Distort is really good for making things in a perspective.
Yeah.
Warp is very much like liquefy,
Yeah.
but with some differences, but it does things similar to liquefy. So I play with both of those sometimes. You can fold
Yeah.
things with it.
Great for-
Oh,
Great
you
for-
can fold them.
I did a page curl in liquefy in the liquefy lesson.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you see the advanced mesh? You can get more points in the warp mesh
Cool.
No, where's that?
over on the left.
Oh.
Left.
Oh, I have not played with that.
Mhm.
I
Interesting.
looked at it once. I didn't figure out how it works. You can move the points around and stuff. Yeah,
Just gives you more
just gives you more
options for control.
warping,
Mhm.
warpability. Yeah.
Oh,
Great.
Like
for
all of
forward-
us.
fabulous. Just
All right.
fabulous.
So you guys have fun. Post your pictures of what you do. I'll get this up on YouTube in the next day or two, and I'll see if I can get the mask ready for next time, but if not, it is coming up soon.
Great.
Thank
Whatever you
you.
want to give us.
Oh.
Take care.
you,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
so
you,
much.
Donna.
Bye. It's great.